Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, it's well, oh gosh, it really is late night for me, but I wanted to give you an idea of the idea. Well, the idea of the idea. I'm so eloquent tonight, aren't I? Let's hope it improves. Wanted to tell you about how when we come home, what we do. Usually, we're a very early start and get out on the road, and we're out on the road an awful lot. It just seems to be that way today, and we don't always do it right. Today we loaded 4 mattresses onto the truck, and no sooner had we loaded 4 onto the truck that we unloaded one of them off and gave it to Manang Rado, and he was very happy. We made a video of that. So we went into town then. We did what we had to do in town. We spoke with Alan, the Canadian expat, and did our deed with that. Then we went around. Now it's kind of like Russian roulette going to the ATM here. You can go there and it will just be a blank screen. Then another time it will be, say, no receipt. You still want to continue. Another time it'll say no money. Can you believe that? It's like the pub with no beer, isn't it? Remember that song, the pub with no beer? Can't sing it because I don't remember it myself, but I remember the title. But it's like the pub with no beer, the bank with no money. How can it be that way? Well, that's we go there and we're expecting, depending on that, and it lets us down. Well, when we get home, what do we both do? Well, I have a desk here which is a complete and utter mess. If I show it to you now, please don't write to me and tell me I'm an untidy person, because I know it. See, but look, this is my mess. I got my hanky there, I got my dictionary down, I got my notes here for doing stuff. I got my 1001 smartest things ever said. I just got the load of stuff. First aid, books. But as we can both agree, all of us, it's only you and me, let's face it. We can agree that I'm in a mess. I am. But what I try to do sometimes is I try to look at something that explains a mystery to me in some way. And I have this book that I keep telling you to go out and buy. I don't know the man, but he has put together a book which is so good. It's actually, he doesn't need any help from me, by the way, because this is in the New York Times bestsellers list. Look at this. Magnificent. There is a tremendous amount of good science here, much of it new to Western readers. From the foreword to Graham Hancock, author of Fingerprints of the Gods. I read Fingerprints of the Gods, really very good. And then I loaned it to someone and they went away and I never got it back. They did call me and ask me, can I post it to you? And I said, no, it's okay. So I've been looking at this book, and part of it, you know that thing where if someone has been to visit you and you have a great animated conversation, and his or her visit was a tremendous joy, that it was alive, and you enjoyed that great conversation where you just can't wait to exchange some of the news. And even though you may not have seen him or her for a while, it's as if as soon as they walk in the door, 30 seconds later, it's as if they've never left. And something magical happens when that happens. And don't you ever wonder why? Don't you ever wonder why you may be thinking of somebody and then they're at the door, or they turn up later, or they give you a call and say, I'm just down the road, why didn't we get together for a cup of coffee, or they call you and say, are we going to have dinner, or they get in touch, and all you've done is be thinking of them. And so many times that's happened to me, where I start thinking about somebody and the next thing I get an email, or there's something there. Or I might start thinking about a certain project, or something that I want to do, and then lo and behold there's an article. Well, I know that there is a reason for this, that as soon as we start to focus on something, the mind automatically starts to sift through the billions of pieces of information, of data, of input into all of the senses, and it sifts out whatever you have mentally stated you're interested in. We talked about this before, about a friend of mine, and I mentioned a particular kind of Toyota four-wheel drive, and he'd never seen them before. No, I don't remember seeing those, he said. And I described it, and then he said, oh yeah, I can. Yeah, I do remember seeing one of those, but they're not very popular, are they? You never see them. They can't have sold any. And a couple of days later he calls me, why did you mention that car? All I'm seeing these days is that damn car. See, as soon as you start to focus on something, your mind gives you all of the input on that, and it excludes other things which you may have lost interest in. So I was looking at this book, and this book is there's one particular part of a chapter, and I'm not going to read all of this to you, but I'll take certain parts of it. Let me give you the name of this book, The Source Field Investigations by David Wilcock. The Source Field Investigations. And there's a subtitle here, The Hidden Science and Lost Civilizations Behind the 2012 Prophecies. I've had this book a little while now. So, David Wilcock. Now, he's talking here about, and he gives you all of the references for what he is saying has happened, and the research. And there's one here by Dr. Peter Gariev. Now, that's my pronunciation, Gariev. G-A-R-I-A-E-V. Gariev. Dr. Gariev, and his discovery was about DNA. Now, what he did was he put DNA into a small container, and then he blitzed it with a laser, that very, very sharp pinpoint of light, and he put that in. Now, it says he put a sample of DNA in a tiny quartz container, zapped it with a mild laser, and then observed with sensitive equipment that could detect even a single photon of light. Now, a photon of light is where the light is such a tiny, tiny piece of light that it's down in the molecular, in a molecule. And DNA, as you know, it goes around like this, doesn't it? It goes around in a spiral. Now, the scientists know everything about DNA. I mean, they're so clever. And what they've worked out is that I think it's either 92 or 98% of our DNA is junk. You see, they're very, very clever. Oh, wow. How they discovered that, I'll never know. And of course, all of that 98% of the junk DNA is not doing a damn thing. It's just junk. It's just kind of floating around in that spiral like that. It's just junk. I'm so glad that we've worked that out. Well, so few scientists will be willing to suggest that light could appear within the pineal gland. Right, now the pineal gland is somewhere in the center here, and it's isolated completely from every source of light. I mean, I got a light here, look. I mean, there's a light. That's my source of light, and I see it and know it. Well, I wonder if we look into the center of this phone here, is there any light in there? Well, I don't think there is. But what they found was this: Dr. Gariev proved that the DNA molecule is pulling in, attracting to it, photons of light. So here you are in a room of darkness, so to speak, and yet light is being created and there's no lights on. So it's as if light is being created. Now, the only technology that we have that could hold light in a spiral like Dr. Gariev found in the DNA molecule is a fibre optic cable. I don't know whether you've ever seen fibre optics, but they used to make little Christmas trees and stuff like that out of it. You have a long, what can we say? You have a long, well, you have something like this. You have something like a pipe, and it can be bent. It can be bent around. It can be more like this, look. It can be a piece, it can be a bit like, it looks like a piece of wire. There, that would be a good example. See, so it's going like this, and you have a light at this end, and it bends all around. You put it around your fingers, put it around your neck, and at the end of it, at this end, comes out the light. That's fibre optics. Well, that's the closest that we've come to being able to describe what Dr. Gariev found, and that is that the DNA attracts light. So we're not used to thinking of light as something that can be stored. I mean, there's the light, you switch the light off and the light's gone, right? Now at first, if you look through looking in your eyes, if you close your eyes after looking at that, you'll see a kind of a ghost image on the inside of your eyeballs of that light, and then it fades away. Well, it says here, the real magic happened when Dr. Gariev ended his experiment of lasering this little molecule, this DNA molecule. He grabbed the quartz container with the DNA in it that he blasted with light, and he moved it to one side, and nothing more was supposed to happen, okay? Nonetheless, to his amazement, even though everything was gone, the container, the DNA, you name it, the light continued spiraling along in the same space as the DNA used to be. Now, whatever was holding that light in place, it did not need the DNA to keep it sustained. So it was something else, something invisible, something powerful enough to store and control visible light within the shape of the DNA molecule itself. So the only rational scientific explanation is that there has to be an energy field that is paired with the DNA molecule. Now, psychics have been talking about this for the longest time, that they can actually see an aura around a person. And if you think about Jesus Christ, and they show pictures of Jesus Christ, and they always show him with a halo around his head, that's, his aura was so incredibly powerful that it could be seen even by non-psychic people. But anyway, so now, what happens to that photon of light? Let's call it one photon of light, one molecule of light. What happens to it? Well, it fades, but it's so very gradual. Well, what Dr. Gariev tried to do was he tried to destroy it. Well, he's a scientist, isn't he? So he blasted this phantom light that was remaining there. So this is what happened. Think of it this way. Here's the molecule, and you bathe this in light, and let's say that the light takes on the shape of this bottle. That's the molecule. And then you take away the bottle, and here you have this phantom of light, phantom shape. Now you need very sensitive equipment to be able to detect that. It's not one of those where you go, oh my God, look, there's a shape of a bottle on the in the light. No, it's not quite like that. You have to have very sensitive equipment to do it. So what he did was he blasted it with liquid nitrogen, which is freezing cold, right? Which creates a sudden burst of great cold. The light spiral disappeared. But then it mysteriously returned after 5 to 8 minutes. So obviously as soon as that area that he blasted with the nitrogen, the freezing cold, as soon as that temperature returned to normal, this phantom image came back. Now, it says, how long do you think this phantom could have lasted? Amazingly, the DNA phantom remained visible for up to 30 days. Now, we're not talking about some new age, I don't know, theorist who is saying, well, it's like the wish, isn't it? Or the secret, you know, it just as you wish for something, if you wish for it hard enough, it'll happen, and everything will be fine. Now, we're talking about a serious scientist, and we're talking about undirected research, which is being done on the basis of, let's see what happens, rather than some university that needs an answer to this. We want an answer to this. It has to answer the question of this. So therefore, the research is not free. It has to be directed in a certain thing, and anything that comes up is pushed to one side, because this is what we're looking for answers to. So, now, let me just, I have to search it out, right? So this information has been available for more than 25 years. And now the experiment was replicated in the United States by perhaps we'll call him Ronnie, Pokora in 1990. Now, no one ever hears about it. Obviously, the DNA phantom is not electromagnetic. There are all sorts of strange things about it that violate everything we know about electromagnetic energy. However, it does fit in very nicely with what we've been calling the source field. On a microbiological level, it appears that we have an energetic duplicate. Now, I heard the story of the great Edgar Cayce. Now, we call him Cayce. In America, they call him Casey. Edgar Cayce. He was the great psychic, could read incredible amounts of information when he went into a trance, simply by being told the name and address of someone. He could actually diagnose medical conditions in all of the correct medical terminology. He was not a medically educated man. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a surgeon. He wasn't any kind of specialist, and yet he knew every bone in the body, every single part. He knew it, and he knew it in its proper Latin or Greek derived name. And the story that I heard about him was he was about to get into an elevator on the 7th floor going down, and when the elevator doors opened, he couldn't see anybody's aura, and so he declined to get on. Doors closed and the elevator plunged to the ground. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it would be a very sobering thing, wouldn't it? You'd be going around looking at everybody's aura and going, oh my God, better order a coffin for that one. Wouldn't you hate that? But the idea of the aura, the idea of this light. So what it means is that when people come, as we started this off, this conversation, one-sided, I know, but when you have visitors that you just love, when they go, there's this phantom light that is like a replica of them, and it's still with you. Now, there are lots of examples of people saying this in their ordinary language every day. He's gone, but I still think that he's here. I don't see him anymore, but it's as if he's sitting in that chair. Well, actually, in a way, he is. She is still sitting in that chair. They've got this, they've left behind all of these photons of light, which are incredibly tiny and sensitive, microbiological level, and they're still there. Now, a lot of people can see things by looking at an object. You can give someone, I don't know whether you've ever been to anyone who can hold an object that you have and sense all kinds of stuff about you and your life and even your future by holding on to that object that is yours. And I'm very sensitive to this myself. I can't pick up something and tell you all about it, but I can tell you this, that I don't want to own things which are taken from someone else. And my mother would never wear clothes, would never accept the clothes of someone who had died of cancer. And don't we have that expression of wearing a dead man's shoes? No, there was something about that, and it spooked her out to be given clothes. She would refuse clothes. We could be dressed in rags, but she wouldn't take the clothes of someone who had died. Now, if you think about what we're talking about now, that there is this phantom of light that is surrounding the area that people have walked in, then what my mother used to say and believe made sense. It made sense. She didn't know, but she could sense that there was something about that person in their condition that they died from, in what was being offered to her, and she wouldn't take it. So if you have an unpleasant interaction with someone who is toxic for you, it has the opposite effect of being visited by someone who is wonderful in your eyes, because someone who is wonderful will leave behind them a sense of wonder. That makes sense, doesn't it? They'll leave behind a sense of wonder. I take my glasses off, and I just spotted as I was doing it something that was written there. So our DNA is somehow interfacing with an energy field that has remained largely unknown to Western scientists, and which leaves behind a phantom that can easily be measured. We can't measure it, our eyes can't measure it, but they've got equipment that can measure it. Now, a long time ago, I tried to tell someone who was an extremely educated man, been, I don't know, to a college like Harvard. He was a former politician and extremely intelligent and educated. So, what do I know? But I told him, I said, you know, when someone has their leg amputated, they can actually see the shape of the leg where it used to be. And he said, of course they can't. Don't be so ridiculous. But it is true. And at the time, I certainly believed that they had equipment, a camera that could see that shape, that force field that is around where the leg used to be. Now, here's a funny thing, and this is very well known. When someone has had their leg amputated, for a long time, their leg, which is now in the trash can, or whatever they call a trash can at the hospital, I don't suppose for a minute that it's the trash can. But anyway, you don't take your leg home with you after it's been chopped off. Their leg itches. They want to they'll ask people, especially people who are in shock and have had an amputation which nobody's got the courage to tell them about yet, and they're lying there and they say, my leg is just so itchy, can you scratch it for me? That's because, in a way, it is still there, in a way that we don't understand. So, when you've lost somebody, when you miss somebody who has gone, just remember that, what does it say? How long do you think this phantom could have lasted? Amazingly, the DNA phantom remained visible on their equipment for up to 30 days after it first appeared. Just imagine that. So, someone that you love could have gone nearly a month ago, and you are still receiving subliminally, that means below your level of awareness, you're still receiving these impressions of them as if they're still there. Amazing, yes? Now, for those of us who are even more sensitive, not me, of course, no. It probably lasts even longer. For me, many years ago, my brother died, and I hadn't seen him for 12 years. Now, think of this as an extension of what we've just been talking about, and maybe it will apply to you. I hadn't seen him for 12 years. I received a phone call when I was in California, and they said, Nev's died. It was a terrific blow to me because I love my brother, and he was about to come out and visit me. And to this day, it's as if he hasn't died. He is as alive to me now as he was in the 12 years prior to my being told that he died, because I kept him alive in my mind in that 12 years from the time that I left the UK and I last saw him. I brought him with me. He was alive. And right now he's still alive. When you love somebody, maybe you keep them alive in this particular way. So, I've rambled on for enough. We're up to, oh my God, must be a record. It's nearly half an hour. Like I always say, she'll kill me. Thanks for listening in. Make sure that you watch out for those photons. They're everywhere. Bye for now. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.